Questions? If people have some questions?
We asked Jane how you two met and courted and so forth, and she said, well, you can ask that question and have Larry in.
Do you want my version or her version? Well, my version is that I've been in Botswana, first as a Peace Corps volunteer and then working for the church for about 9 years. And I was teaching at a mission school by that time, and she was assigned to the same school where I was teaching. And she was man-hungry.
So she chased you until you caught her.
Why, she can give you her version.
There wasn't anyone else to chase. So. No, Larry was about to come back to the United States. He said, oh, I'm going to go home and find a wife and do a bit more study. So he shared this with a group of older women that he was in Bible study with. And they immediately started praying for him. And about 2 months later, I arrived. And after we got to know each other a little bit, he took me to that Bible study. And those ladies, just their eyes, the prayer really does work. Yeah. So that's the real version.
Charming. I think that's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, how many hours a day do you teach this English? I mean, do you have several different classes, or do you work with
We're
the
a
same
team.
group?
We're a team, and we try to keep them engaged the whole day, from 8 to 9, sometimes 9, sometimes 8 o'clock, right through to 4. And because, of course, the more they're engaged and speaking English, then the better it is for them. Yeah.
So,
But I don't teach from 8 to 4 every day. We juggle our classes. We have about 90 students come every year. It's been those figures for the last few years. So then we divide the class into beginners and those which have a little bit more English, and teach them in smaller classes.
do they have the technology, the phones and things?
Cell phones.
Huh?
I think you can go to the most remote village in Zimbabwe and you'll find people with cell phones. Yeah. Yeah. So most of our students, yes, have cell phones. Yeah.
Cell phones actually took off a lot faster in Africa than they did in the United States because people didn't have access to landlines.
Yeah.
So the entry level cost of getting a phone was much more accessible with cell phones in Africa. Here, you know, there are many people, I've got a phone at home, what do I need a cell phone for? Yeah. But we find that the access to computers is a lot more limited because the cost of a computer is far more than the cost of the cell phone. So many of the students, they come very fluent with their thumbs, but to use a computer, they have not yet been exposed to that. But when I get students, I assume that they already have the basics. And that's the way most of us who are teaching the actual programs feel. And so it's very important that the students coming from those places where they don't have access, that they learn those basics in Jane's class in the intensive English, so that when they get to me, then I can focus on the specific programs, the specific software for my particular area. One of the things I require all of my students to do is to slaughter a chicken. And most of them have slaughtered a chicken or even goats or cattle, but some of them have not. When we slaughter the chicken, we don't just slaughter it, but we also weigh the different components, and we have both the practical part and the theoretical part that helps them learn how to do calculations. So we were in the lab, and we were weighing the different components, and I saw one student on his computer. So I went over to bawl him out, and I saw that he was watching a YouTube video of how to slaughter a chicken.
Well, you can find anything on the internet.
Wow.
But that's the kind of access and the confidence in use that we are encouraging. Because you probably know you can find out so much on the internet right now. And many of our students will be posted to very remote areas where they might have access to their cell phones to the internet, but they might be days away from a library where they can gain answers to some of the questions they might have, whether they are in agriculture or business, or we have hospital administrators being trained. We have a whole range. We have teachers, educators. So they need this access to the internet and the ability to use it. If they don't, then they'll fall farther and farther behind. You know, it's a world of knowledge. And if they don't have the access to that knowledge, then they will lose their competitiveness.
So you said there were some groups from Bettendorf and stuff that went, and you have groups that visit. What kind of things do they come and do if they come to visit and work?
So Larry had one young guy, he must have been about 17, digging a latrine pit, which was very deep. Sometimes they do painting. We have farm workers residence areas, and they were painting there. Sometimes he has them in the fields with hose and has them weeding. They often go over to the mission across the road where they work, well, they play with the children in the children's home there. That's very popular. Some come to my classes and I ask them to speak to the students and if some of them have any skills, to share those with the students. So a variety of things. But I think the main thing is not exactly what they do, but just the relationships they form. It's a real education for everybody when cultures come together and talk. So, yeah, you were doing an interesting thing, weren't you, recently in Guatemala? So, no.
I'm curious their perception of the United States, you know, as they, because
Yeah,
we
what do
have
they
that.
think of Donald Trump?
Well, not him specifically, because the way in which we influence the world in some way, shape, or form. I'm just curious their perspective on this country.
I don't know, what would you say?
Do they want to come here, or
No.
Yeah. They have access to a lot of media, and a lot of them have watched movies, television shows, and we try and convince them that not everybody lives like the people that they see in the movies. I mean, they are convinced that everybody in America is rich, and in relative terms, it might be a valid judgment.
Yeah.
But we know that people here, even if they are earning good incomes, have economic pressures that they don't realize. But the minimum wage for a farm worker in Zimbabwe, the government minimum wage, is $80 a month.
Can you say that again?
The minimum wage
Yep.
for an agriculture worker is $80 a month.
Okay. Okay.
And the basic cost of most foods is, well, we can buy huge mangoes for 25 cents. We can buy huge avocados for 25 cents. But many of the other foods, it's almost the same as it is in the United States. Many of the foods are cheaper here in the United States. So if you can imagine trying to survive, trying to feed a family, and paying school fees. And school fees, even at government schools, can be $75 a year per child. So if you're earning $80 a month and you're trying to find food for your family and clothes, then yeah, the perspective is very changed. But some of them also think that we're all as good looking as movie stars.
Yeah.
I mean, they look at me and they think that's a good judgment. But
I would say too that they value education. And they see education as a way of getting out of their situation of relative poverty, wherever they are on the economic scale. So African Zimbabwean parents will make huge sacrifices to send their children to schools. And if they can get as far as a university education, this is a cause for great celebration. And since they don't have a nuclear family situation like ours, it's much more of an extended family. They'll have all kinds of relatives contributing. And then, of course, that person is expected to support everybody when he's got a good job or she's got a good job. So, yes, the USA, I think, is perceived to be a place where you can get a very valuable education. And what tends to happen is if we do have students come here, then they don't want to go back. They can see what kind of a life is possible here, and this is where they want to stay. So that's why having Africa University on the African continent is a great thing, because students tend to stay in Africa. But if they do get a chance to come here, they will take it.
I had a question. I mean, you're showing that sprinkling system a while ago. Do you have any problems? Like, I noticed your corn was this taller than you were in that field. Do you have irrigation other than the sprinkling? I mean,
Do you want me to answer that? Why are you laughing?
We have a division of labor here. We do have an irrigation system at the moment. We have 20-foot light steel pipes that we have workers move individually, and they connect them. And it's very labor intensive, and the yields tend to be a bit more erratic because the spread of water is not as uniform. One of the advantages of the center pivot is that you have a very uniform application, and also it doesn't take as much labor. We are able to irrigate in the summer or the winter. We grow wheat in the winter time. And we don't get any rain between April and November. So the only way to grow crops in the wintertime is by irrigation. It's actually a good time to grow some crops. And in the summertime, we use the irrigation system for supplementary. Because just like here, sometimes the rains come a bit farther apart than what we like. And so if the rains are not falling evenly enough, then we'll come in and irrigate.
you grow beets?
Beets,
Beets.
there are some people,
Turnips? Root vegetables?
the main vegetable is kale.
Kale. That's
Yeah,
good for you.
kind of like collard greens. And in Zimbabwe, almost everyone who has a garden will have a big plot of kale, because most Shona people eat that every day. They have a cornmeal that they make with kind of like mashed potatoes, and especially for people of lower incomes, they might eat that twice a day of they call it sadza, the hard cornmeal and the kale. People of better incomes will eat more meat. A lot of people with low incomes, they just can't afford very much meat. So they will eat meat when they go to weddings and when they go to funerals. But other than that, they don't buy very much meat. And weddings are more of a community affair. Here, oh, I can't go to that wedding. I didn't get an invitation. Well, that doesn't make any difference for most of the weddings. In fact, some people, when they print their wedding invitation, they hand them out, and they say, please photocopy it, put it on your bulletin boards, tell all of your friends and neighbors. So it's very much a community affair.
That's the way it should be. So what kind of meat do they, if they do at these celebrations? I noticed you had a cattle there, in that one picture there. But is there much beef there?
Beef?
Yeah.
beef, a lot of grass-fed beef. There's very limited corn-fed beef because corn is used for feeding people.
Yeah,
And
that's
the economics of feeding our beef cattle,
It's
they
coming-
can't get the price
it's
they
coming
need.
back here, people are eating more grass-fed.
But
I mean, you know, that's becoming more popular now, to have more grass-fed. I mean, they
yeah,
have
well, we know
advertised grass-fed beef,
grass-fed beef is more healthy,
yeah.
less
Doesn't
cholesterol
have so much
than
hormones and
than
stuff.
corn-fed beef. But people are not so conscious of that, although better educated people are health conscious, but more as a matter of we can't afford it.
Yeah.
Goat in the rural areas,
Oh, sorry.
in the rural areas, goat is often the poor man's cow because you can slaughter a goat and finish it, and if you don't have refrigeration, then you can make sure how the meat is eaten. People eat a lot of chicken as well.
That's always good.
And one of the biggest chicken suppliers in Zimbabwe is called Irving's. And they have hired a number of our graduates. In fact, 2 of their top people are African University graduates. And they have recently expanded into other African countries. And they had one of our agriculture students from Uganda doing an internship. And then when she graduated and went back to Uganda, she helped to start their branch in Uganda. And we like to see that because we know that the kids are not only benefiting from the skills they gain, but also from the connections that they are making. And especially if they're going into international business, sometimes those connections are key in being successful.
We were talking a little bit about the economic situation, which isn't very happy at the moment. Someone asked us the question, is Zimbabwe stable? And I don't really know very many countries in Africa that you could describe as stable because you never quite know what's going to happen. I suppose even here that's true. But in thinking about it, I think that a lot of Zimbabweans find their stability in the church. I come to the United States and I see in some communities that most people don't go to church. We came through New York and that seemed to be the what I observed, and other places as well. But in Zimbabwe, on a Sunday morning, you will see that most people are in one church or another. And church is a very important part of their life, their belief, the need for the spiritual. African people are very spiritual. And I believe this is where people find their stability. They pray a lot. They have a future, a hope for a future through the church.
I heard you say, you had your agriculture business students, and I know you're in agriculture. What other kind of programs does African University offer, or do they all kind of center around the agriculture perspective?
Our biggest faculty is business. I think that's another area. People seem to think this is where we can actually make some money, and yeah. So business, theology, we have pastors come wanting to do more training. Health science, we have a lot of people involved in health, and that's another really important area, particularly when we have such nasty creatures as the mosquito around. And education, humanities, and agriculture.
You probably saw the Ebola crisis about 1.5 years ago, and you saw that even the American military were there. What a lot of people don't understand fully is that if you don't have some trained people on the ground already who are familiar with the infrastructure, who are familiar with the culture, then you bring a bunch of strangers in there, you're bound to make lots of mistakes. So sometimes these local people who have been trained are key to the success of the program. I think you know that our church has been supporting the Imagino Malaria. You might not have heard that the country of Swaziland, which is south of us, has been declared malaria-free.
Wonderful.
And you know, that is just astounding news. I saw a graph in the Economist magazine the other day, and it gave the most dangerous animals by how many people died. And lions, the line for lions was about like this, and crocodiles was this, and hippos like this, snakes was like this, and mosquito was like this.
Fascinating.
You might have heard that if you think that you are too small to be significant, try sharing a room with a mosquito.
That's true.
But the fact that our church is involved in an initiative, working with many other organizations, and has been successful in pushing a disease as dangerous as malaria out of one country, then it gives us hope that maybe they can do it in other countries as well. But the people who are coming from the States and other places, they can't work in isolation. They have to work with a local population who've been trained to and understand the theory behind whatever they are doing. And I can't say that I know anyone from African University who's directly involved in Swaziland, but I know that some of our AU graduates have been involved in the Imagino Malaria program in Zimbabwe. So they are helping provide some of that expertise.
I have another question about water. You said that people share the wells and so forth. Is the water? Can you drink it without filtering it or purifying it in any way?
It depends on where you are. The Harare capital water is not considered safe for various reasons. In Mutai, near where we live, people normally drink it from the tap with no worries. On the campus, even people coming on short-term volunteer and mission programs will drink the water from the university water supply. And I don't know of anyone who's ever had a stomach problem because of the water. So we feel very, very fortunate.
Yeah,
That depends very much where you are, and it varies from country to country, and it varies from locality to locality within that country. Unfortunately, bottled water has become a big thing, just like it is here in the United States.
Is there a lot of focus on the recycling and stuff like that? You know, mentioning the bottled water, you know, there's the complaint that we're using too much plastic and the recycling. Is that large in Africa or is it?
Recycling is very expensive, I think. You can do it because you have the resources here, and it's just not a feasible thing in Zimbabwe. So unfortunately what happens is it gets thrown out of car windows and streets get littered with Coke cans and these polystyrene things. It really is a horrible situation, and we're getting more educated, I think, as to keeping our environment cleaner. But as far as recycling, I mean, we try with paper and that kind of thing, but yeah, there's nothing very much in place there.
They need to have
That
some art
being
projects,
said,
you know.
because there are so many people with limited incomes, there are many household goods and clothes that here that just get thrown away and not used again. But because of the number of people who are desperate to get furniture in their house, or even to buy clothes, then it's much easier to find someone to recycle, to reuse items that you might not have use for anymore. And people are very, very creative in the way they use some articles.
This is a Coke can, an example. People will take scraps that they find And with unemployment at 80%, people have to find ways of making money, and this is one that tourists will buy, and it's an income for people. And different kinds of metals are used in a variety of ways. So I think if some of you have to go somewhere, we don't want to keep you here, but you're welcome to come and have a look at some of the ways that people earn a little bit of money, basket work, and this is used a lot in church. This together with drums to keep a rhythm going. The melody comes from their voices. Of course, harmony comes very
The praise
naturally.
band could use some of that.
Yep.
There you go. Stay tuned.
And if you come to Zimbabwe, you'll see that the predominant form of art is sculpture from a soft stone, very breakable. But this is lovely. You will find it all over, and beautiful forms that they make. So I think I didn't want to go without just, if you know of any young person who is interested in mission, trying out mission, or feels a calling to go somewhere just short term for a couple of years, this is a program that our board has started recently, and this is what our Africa University graduates actually are involved in as well. It's a training that's given, and the young person goes for 2 years to another country and just has an experience of what it is to live and work and share the gospel in a different setting. So it's been very successful, and I'll leave these on the table. If you know of someone, please do take them and let them have a look at it.
We'll be happy to stay around and answer individual questions, but we want to say one more time, thank you very much.